And the class kind of got quiet. And then we all just kind of realized like, yeah, that's right. That boy's thinking about his soul in that moment.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Gardner, and I am joined today by Paul, Tanya, and a guest we are so thankful to have, Mr. Jeremy Breland.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
It's good to be with you.
Yes, Jeremy serves our HLS campus here as the dean of our high school students.
That's right.
And we are so glad to have you.
Yeah, great to be here. Yeah.
Yes. On today's episode, we are discussing how to intentionally form your students' character, both in the classroom and outside of it. And Jeremy is one of the best people we could think of to have on because he works tirelessly with the high schoolers to really cultivate a certain culture there.
Yes. Yeah. It's a honor and a pleasure to do. I kind of see my job there as not only just helping with administrative duties, but most importantly, being there with the students day in and day out, and thinking not only about their mind, their academics, thinking about their calculus skills and their skills in Latin or in literature, but also thinking about their hearts. Yeah.
So he said that so enthusiastically, day in and day out. But if you had asked him mid-May, it would have been day in and day out. A couple weeks rest in the summer and you're ready to go again.
Yeah, to be honest, looking down the hallway just last week, we closed the door on Friday last week, and I looked down the hallway and it's so empty. And I walked out with my wife, who's the college counselor, and I said, I already missed them. I want them back. So it is a pleasure.
It doesn't take long, does it?
Yeah. It's quiet. So yeah.
Embrace the quiet.
I know.
The noise is coming again.
The noise is coming. Yes.
Oh, and Paul and Tanya, you will have a lot to add to this as well. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Jeremy, before we get into the main event, the main topic, we typically go around and share what we're reading. I won't make you go first this time. You can think about it. But Tanya, how about you? What's on your
I just
bookshelf?
Started Great Expectations.
Did you?
Yes. And then I'm trying to read all the summer reading because it's been a year since I've read Great Expectations.
Oh.
And so I felt like I should reread it. And then I have to read All Creatures Great and Small.
Mm-hmm.
I have never actually read that.
Yes.
And then I will have read everything that our students are reading in the summer all the way up. But except for Call of the Wild, which I just cannot make myself read. I'm just not going to. It's Brian Lowe's favorite book. So I can't read awful things about you all have read it, so I don't have to.
It's not awful.
No, I mean things I just don't like.
It's been so long since I've read it. I should go back and reread it.
I don't like sad animal stories.
Okay.
I just can't do sad animal stories. So
You haven't heard The Call.
I've not, and I'm not going to. I'm just assuming that you all have made a judgment that is good and true, and that this is a great book for our students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes it's worth reading stuff that you don't like or stuff that's hard and stuff that you
I
realize.
didn't want to read Hornblower and loved it.
Love that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it.
Yeah, I enjoy Call of the Wild. I especially enjoy some of London's short stories. I think it's How to Build a Fire.
To Build a Fire.
To Build a Fire.
That one I remember from high school. We thought it was such a crazy story.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, but
the gist of it is a guy's up in the Yukon. He's freezing to death. He needs to build a fire to keep himself warm, and he builds the fire, and then snow from the tree up above falls on it and extinguishes it, and he dies. And it's
I am definitely not going to read London.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry, yeah. If anybody hadn't read that, now you know.
Goodness.
But I just remember being in high school and we were all like, what just happened?
Wow.
That's life.
Yes.
That's
Jack
right.
London, you're right.
And
Jack
that's his
London.
point.
Yeah. Jack London is gritty like that.
Yeah.
Like this is what happens when you go out in the wild.
That's right.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right.
yeah, I don't want to know what happens when you go out in the wild.
So Great Expectations.
Great Expectations, which I'm just, from the very beginning, it's funny, it's endearing. It's just, I just am such a huge Dickens fan. So this one's easy. And I know I'll enjoy All Creatures Great and Small. Have you read that?
I have not. No, I have not.
You need to
It's
get on
the
that
list.
summer reading.
I know. Well, actually, if it was coming around to me next, I was going to say I was reading Chesterton's The Man Who Is Thursday.
Oh, okay, good.
Or Who Was Thursday.
The Man Who Was Thursday. Yeah.
So, I actually broke that open last night.
Oh, good.
So you're at the very beginning of it.
At the very, very beginning.
We're all reading summer reading.
I
enjoyed Paul, summer reading.
I picked up Shop Class as Soulcraft.
Okay, that's not summer reading.
That is not summer reading. No, I know you've been on a summer reading kick, but I didn't know that we all were.
I would appreciate any help I can get. We just want to make sure they're the right choices for our children.
Well, the other night I was like, okay, I'm actually going to pick up a book. It's been a while to actually sit down and read a book. But most of our books are packed away because of the foster kids and just what was happening in our home at that moment. And so I had a limited selection of what was on the shelf, and that one stuck out to me because the question of it is, why did Shop Class go away, and what role did it fill?
I didn't know it went away.
Well, in a lot of schools, like with the whole STEM push and all that stuff, they got rid of actually the shop classes where you'd work with your hands.
Right. I had a shop class.
Did you?
And a home ec class. Everybody had to take both.
Yeah. So this was published, I think, in 2009. And the author, I think, is arguing for some perspective on craftsmanship, and that there is a value to doing something physical in some form of an artistic way. And there is a whole segment of our humanity, a section of our humanity that of who every person participates in this need to actually touch tangible things. And so I'm interested to see where he goes. I don't think he's actually making the case about what we ought to do in school, which I don't know. I have to see how the whole book goes, but I think he's more making the point that this is something that we don't value in our society that we ought to value. Like, to be a good motorcycle mechanic is a good thing.
Right.
Yes.
And so, which speaks to me highly too. I mean, I'm out there all the time. Like, I go home and I might spend four hours doing stuff before I go to bed with my hands,
right.
Yeah. And
when you should be reading our summer reading.
When I should.
It's not working on the motorcycle for 4 hours, though.
No, it's
the tractor. He's working on the tractor.
No, the most recent 4 or 5 hour night was darting the cows with medicine, with a dart gun. It was fun. My neighbor came over and helped me. It was a moment of community. Yeah. And the cows are feeling better now, so it's good. It's all good.
That is. They were sick.
Yeah, the pink eye.
Right.
And so we're trying to change the way we're managing things to help them. But so we had a great little community day. Neighbor came over and darted my cows.
Welcome to the Memoria Press Farm.
Just like James Harriet.
All creature great and small. I'm living it.
Today we are discussing animal agriculture.
I'm going to read it.
Veterinary science.
Exactly right.
But anyway, shop class as Soulcraft. And I've heard a lot of people talk about it, so I thought it was worth reading.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. We're not talking about veterinary science today. It's character formation. And before we get too far into the conversation, Paul, can you just kind of set the stage by what we mean by that? Because we can take this conversation so many directions.
No, Jessica, you have asked me this like 3 times in the past 2 days in preparation for this conversation. I never answered you. And so now you're making me do this on the podcast.
That's right.
I think when we talk about character formation, we need to think about, fundamentally, like when we've talked about classical education, we said we're teaching wisdom and virtue. That's one thing that we put out there. Okay, so how do we form virtue? And when we say character formation, we're really talking about how do we inculcate into the deepest part of the child's being a fundamental disposition to do the good. And
that's helpful.
I think we try to accomplish that on different levels, right? With the culture that we create, what we read and what we talk about, the values that we esteem, the exhortations that we give, all those sorts of things kind of fit into that. But it is a general overarching perspective of we want these children to walk out with a fundamental orientation towards doing the good.
That's really helpful. And with that definition, then Jeremy, I'd be curious to know, what would you say to someone who says, well, classroom is for academics and outside of the classroom is for more formative integrity or character forming opportunities?
Sure. Yeah. If that's the case, then the school would only see a student as just a mind, and that's never the intention with educating somebody, right? We're not merely just educating, the student's intellectual component of their lives, right? We're not even so much concerned about like their intellectual prowess. Of course, we want them to learn math facts. We want them to learn facts about literary analysis and all of those things. But we want all of those things to be heading toward an end. And I think that is making a person, right? Like, as you just said, Paul, aligning their inclinations and their tastes and their instincts toward the good thing. So that after the education that they receive, either in homeschool or in a full-time school like Highlands, they might come up to a situation and say, I need to think about this, but I'm inclined from what I know and the way I've been raised, I'm inclined to this way. I think that this way is the right way. And I think that's education coming to a successful end there. Yeah. So in every class, both in the math class and the metaphysics class, they're heading in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. When we think about academics, can each of you give examples of, like, when you were saying math facts, or can you give an example of an academic subject and then a way that you could see, oh yeah, here's an example of how, as we incorporate character formation into this discipline, the study of this.
Into the study of a particular subject?
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be, well, I mean, you could go subject by subject, but I really think that it just comes from each teacher and the curriculum itself. And it all lends itself to that. As we know, math and science are not my favorite subjects, but I can see that I could see character formation in math would be just, that perseverance and that just recognizing that apparently math is something that is like 2 + 2 is 4 for a reason. And we can't just say 2 + 2 is 6 because we're making up our own rules. So all of that is God created order. And
we submit ourselves to that order.
Right. And you really, I really have to submit myself in math.
It's a lot to submit.
Yes, it is a lot. Literature is easy.
Right.
Sure,
Yeah.
Because it's right there in the characters, good and bad. But and science, I think, just that creation of man and the world and the miraculous way that it all works together. Why ticks?
True.
Especially in the summer, though, they do good things, right?
I don't know about that.
Which part?
The ticks do good things. I don't know.
Then why are they created?
Well,
I feel like everything's got some kind of purpose. I don't know what.
I agree with that. I struggle with mosquitoes and ticks, but maybe that's a podcast for when you have read all Creatures Great and Small. Maybe you'll find that answer.
Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe so.
But I think as far as academics and character formation, anything that's taught to mastery requires a great amount of self-control and discipline. And so, because some children, it'll come easy to them, but then they're required to master it more. At some point, it's going to be hard for them, and they're going to have to say, I know this is hard, but I got to sit down and do this. Right. Yes. And that's a fundamental stepping stone towards doing the hard thing later on when it's, I don't like this person, but I know I'm called to love this person. And so, and I've learned how to do hard things and not complain about them, and overcome, my appetites or emotions of what I want to do. And so I think, one of the biggest points that I walked out of reading Climbing Parnassus was the discipline that it instills in learning Latin. It just requires that amount of self-control that you do walk out fundamentally different in what your habits are.
Jeremy, can you tell us some of the things that you've put in place at HLS toward these ends? I know that you do so much with the students.
Yeah. Well, actually, we are in conversation right now for our formation talks. So first thing in the morning, I'll usually clap to signal everybody to come out into the hallway, and the 9th through 12th grade to come out into the hallway, and we'll have a meditation. I like to call them meditations, a little talk, about 5 minutes from any of the faculty. And we think a lot during the summer about those things. We're focusing on theological virtues or cardinal virtues. And then we're also having teachers come up and give little anecdotes and little stories and how they've actually lived that virtue out in their life, or were, brought to the end of themselves in some kind of way and realize that I've actually been going wrongly, or this is the right way to go. And I mean, it's actually a lovely thing sometimes in the morning. Sometimes it's a thing that'll bring a tear to your eye. I mean, I know it's first thing in the morning, it's 8 a.m. Some students may not be bringing any tears to their eyes other than the test that they have in Latin, in just 5 minutes. But yeah, putting those things together actually is as Tanya said, if you asked me in April about it, that would have been maybe a different thing. But I'm already getting excited about the August talks that we're going to have with the students. So in that kind of way, we think very actively and speak very, how would you even say, like proactively with the students, right there first thing in the morning. Usually, sometimes even challenging them with a certain kind of thing, saying like, "Hey, now that you've heard this, let's try to put that into practice today. Like, let's be thankful today, or like let's dig in and do the hard thing today, and not begrudge it or groan or whatever have you." And oftentimes that's very easy to do with our code of conduct as well at Highlands.
The code of conduct, the manners that we've started in kindergarten that we've started studying all through. All of that, the way we treat each other, the way we treat adults. All of those things are being taught at the same time we're teaching really hard Latin and math.
Yes.
So, but it's a lifestyle that, we just have to require. But I'm telling you, if you let it go, if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. I mean, you really have to stay on it. And it really is something you've got to think about and really force until it becomes a habit.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
in that vein, Mr. Breland had his, I think he called it a lost and found box, but it was more like a confiscated box. And so in the interest of training these children to have a clean space, if they left stuff out after school, like by their desk, it disappeared. And it was not uncommon that a student would come to me and say, "I don't know where my book is." And I say, "Go check Mr. Breland's box."
Students started to call it the book prison.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's right.
Jail.
I think that's right. I had a student like right at the tail end of the year say, "Oh yeah, my book was in Mr. Breland's book jail."
So how did they get it out?
It was in the teacher little work area that we had. So they had to, walk shamefully into the teacher work area, head down, and say, "May I have my,
And that is the virtue of humility.
That's right. And the first week of school, when it was new, students were like, "What's going on?" But very quickly, students caught on with it. And of course, a lot of kids are busy, and there's things going on. Sometimes we have house meetings, and kids are running around and moving tables, and I totally get that. But day in, day out, the students got better and better and better.
But it took an effort on your part. You literally had to go from classroom to classroom at the end of the day when you were tired and had many other things to do, and pick those books up and put them in jail. And so that it took effort to train them.
Yeah.
So, you can't just leave it to them. And it is worth doing those things because they do learn, and they want to do. Kids want to do. They want to please you, and they want to be good.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that even before a book would make it into book jail, I would go and remind students at the end of the day, make sure you grab your things. I wouldn't say like, "or else," but like, "Hey, make sure you grab your things." And a lot of times they're not doing it maliciously. They're forgetful. They need help. They need help. A 17-year-old, 18-year-old needs help just as much as a 15-year-old oftentimes.
Even with their binders, just those binder checks to make sure they're not living in total chaos. All of that stuff, that building order. is valuable. And I think part of character formation, learning that discipline and that if you can find things, that life is going to be better and easier for you, and also respectful of the other people in the classroom with you.
Yes.
And it sounds like some of those principles you could really translate into the homeschool setting pretty easily.
Oh, 100%.
Because you have siblings, you have family members,
Yes.
you can't leave your stuff everywhere.
That's right.
Book jail could be a home thing too,
And needed to be in my home.
Yeah. I would love to hear what are some surprising moments along the way with character formation that you've encountered with your students? I know you had high school students, you teach high school students.
I taught 5th and 6th.
Okay.
So I was upper grammar school, really. Surprises? I think the biggest thing for me as a 6th grade teacher was that memorization of Horatius at the Bridge, that ability to discipline themselves and have the perseverance to memorize a 70 stanza poem and then stand up and recite it. I listened this year, and you did too, to our students reciting it. And I mean, that is a massive accomplishment. And it is forming their character because it is teaching them that they can do really difficult things, but that it is hard work. This takes months, and we make them schedule it themselves. We make them have their own schedule of how many stanzas they need to do a week and figure all that out and then do it. And I think that's the most impressive. And I get in the homeschool market, Horatius at the Bridge is really growing. I think in the past month, I've issued, I think, at least 20 Horatius awards to homeschoolers who have sent me the videos. And they're very good. And it's a huge, anybody who's done it, any family, because it's a family affair. It is just, it's a big accomplishment.
Yeah. I've got one for kind of what our curriculum does. If a student is reading and a teacher is thinking with the students about things. A couple of years ago, I taught Anna Karenina to the 11th grade. And I had a student in the back, and I mean, talking about Horatius at the Bridge being quite a feat, Anna Karenina is quite a feat in a full-time school, day in, day out. It's 817 pages in our text.
What, 18 weeks? Is that right. About 18 weeks?
Roughly, yeah. It's like a trimester and a half, just about. I mean, it's 70 pages a week that we're reading together. So those kids are
not easy pages.
No. And actually, the way it's printed as well, the text is rather small, so 70 gets kind of
lots
gets
of
kind
words
of big.
on a page.
But I had a student about midway through, right when the text is getting, I won't spoil it for anybody, but right when the text is getting, upsetting, because it's a psychological novel, and you're thinking through the way that Anna's thinking. I don't think Tolstoy's a point in Anna Karenina is adultery's bad, don't do it. It's look at the way Anna is thinking. I bet you think like that too. And a student in the back very frankly just said, after he had read, I asked for remarks or questions or comments, and the boy said, I'm not a turn of the 20th century Russian princess, but I feel like I think like Anna. Like I think the same ways she does. My desires go that direction. And the class kind of got quiet, and then we all just kind of realized, like, yeah, that's right. That boy's thinking about his soul in that moment. And it was very quick. We put a period on it and moved right on. But right then and there, that was the curriculum provoking a boy to think, what about your soul? So yeah. That's one of my favorite moments. As long as I can remember things, I will remember that one. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
It's so poignant too that the reflection of a 17-year-old, they are capable of it.
Yes,
right in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Paul, anything from? Well, you always have stories from your
I mean,
classes.
Jeremy's story made me think of the conversation I had with a class of 8th grade girls about what love is, because they saw Dido in the Aeneid, and they and one or two of them made a comment about, oh, she loved Aeneas so much, and I was like, hang on, and we ended up having a really long conversation about what is love? Is love a self-sacrificial gift to the other, right? Something that's hard for us, but we are prioritizing the other, or is it about how we feel, right? And like in the end, we ended with Jesus on the cross. And like, if this is the example of love, then it's not about, us being so distraught that we throw ourselves on a funeral pyre and kill ourselves like Dido does. And just to be able to prioritize a proper understanding of what the good is. I mean, that happens through the curriculum all the time, but I mean, with the different ages, you have to meet them where they are. Right. I mean, when I taught 7th grade boys, I had a chair of frustration. And when I never put them in it, I put myself in it. When they were not living up to my expectations, I would sit in the chair of frustration for about 15 seconds and they go, okay, we need to actually think about how we're acting and change our ways. Came out a few times. And
we need to mend our ways.
But they ended up, it would change their attitude in the moment. We'd be able to actually get something done, And that was part of training them how to be better students. Was I have to show you've driven me to a point of desperation here, and that means you all need to act differently. And I mean, it's lighthearted, things like that. But whereas the juniors and I mean, teaching them philosophy this year, I mean, I had some of them say that it completely changed the way they saw the world was that class, And I just, I mean, part of that's my goal, but it's really surprising when it happens.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, as the students get older, they get cognizant enough to say those things. And then, but to have them said to you, you're like, oh, like this really does have a massive impact on them.
Yes.
And so I was riding high on that one yesterday when I read some notes.
And just by way of saying that should be an encouragement to anybody teaching at that level, and you thinking like maybe these kids just aren't getting it, or maybe I'm just kind of like talking to the wall right here and it's going right over their heads. No, they're listening, and they may not tell you, but it is changing their lives.
Yeah.
I can
but
only
it
imagine.
is frustrating because all teachers have bad days and students that just
I don't know what you're talking about.
That just make
We're
you
going to come sit in your classrooms a little bit more, Jeremy, and see how you do this.
Yeah, everything hunky-dory.
Students that make you feel like they are not hearing it, they are not getting it. And then when those students turn around, it's just, and maybe you don't see them turn around. I mean, maybe it could happen that they just go off. I remember when Wendell Berry was teaching here, and he really struggled with one student when he was teaching writing. He really struggled with one student. I think it was in Nick's class. And all year long, they clashed all year. He didn't do what Wendell asked him to do. He didn't want to be there. It really bothered Wendell that he sat there, slouched over and obviously unhappy. And then the next year, Wendell went to a graduation or something that we had. And this student walked over to him and told him how his class had changed his life and made him think. And Wendell was he said that meant more than anything, from all those students that did exactly what I asked them to do and did it joyfully, but just knowing that student that was sitting there and I thought he was not hearing anything, that his ears were totally closed to me.
Yes.
And for him to say that class had made a big difference to him was very satisfying. That's the kind of thing that keeps you teaching.
Yeah. And sometimes you never actually hear it.
That's exactly right.
You never actually hear it.
That's right.
And you've got to just trust in the Lord that you're watering here or sowing or whatever you're doing in this child's life. But that the student is not who they're going to be. Right. They're going to become somebody, right? They're still being formed. I could think of myself in high school. I probably wouldn't have liked to teach myself.
Amen. It's the same here.
Yeah.
I was a great student.
Yeah. But these students aren't done yet. These students aren't done yet. They're still going. And you may not ever get to see it, but the Lord's doing that work. So,
That's a really beautiful encouragement, because your service to your students, whether it's in your home or a classroom, is really like service done in faith. that
yes,
that this will, by God's grace and mercy, this will matter, and these seeds will grow, and this person that I'm responsible for will be formed.
Yeah.
You just really have to trust that that's going to happen, and you have to do you have to do the hard work to continue on. And with the difficult students, sometimes you just want to give up on them, but you can't.
Yeah,
because they are being formed.
Yeah. And then what a great honor it is to have a part to play in that, just a small part to play in that student's life. That ends up becoming not a chore, but an honor.
And sometimes the students that are the hardest, once you win them over, once they come through it, they are the most staunch defenders of whatever you were fighting with them to accept, right? And it's worth that.
Yes.
For them.
Yeah. Because they've seen that you've loved them through it all. Right. And they know that you're on their side.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in a way, it sounds like what we're saying is the work of forming little people forms us too.
It does.
It's so formative to our character.
It is. It really is. It does. And that's why we teachers don't make money. I mean, no, we're not teaching. We're never going to be rich. Right. It's a career that is grossly underpaid in this country and probably other countries as well, for the amount of work and the huge job that it is and the huge responsibility that we are forming these young people. So, teachers are doing it. And like Jeremy said, we're doing it because it's an honor to do that. It's a privilege to be in that classroom. It was a privilege for me to sit at the dining room table with my children on either end. And I did my best with them. I made a lot of mistakes, but I would do it again in a heartbeat because it was one of the most satisfying things that I ever did. So
Amen.
we're teaching because because we love it.
Yes.
Not to buy that giant ring full of diamonds.
But also, I mean, I just think that this is a good reminder of, because you can get stuck in I've got to teach them how to read, or I have to teach this content. And those moments where you can speak into them about what it means to be good, what it means to be virtuous, how we ought to treat the other, all of those things, those moments are worth stopping for. And those moments are the ones worth contemplating because, they need to know those academics. Those academics are going to help them in their entire lives to be able to, reason well and communicate and all those things. But if we reduce it solely to the academics, they will come out with a whole portion of their humanity just stunted.
Which was the point that Jeremy made in the very beginning, that they're not just a mind or a...
Yes.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Oh, great discussion, everybody. Oh, well, thank you for joining us today, Mr. Breland. It was a great joy to have you with us. Thank you, Tanya and Paul, as always. And thank you as well. We will be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.